Roll call.
Commissioner Bennett, Commissioner Blakely, Commissioner Doris,
Here.
Chairman Haley.
Here.
Haley, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Commissioner Kine
Here.
and Commissioner Mobley.
Okay, well, I'd like to call for, oh, we don't have the minutes. Approval of the minutes, sorry. Did you read the minutes?
I did read the minutes.
Well, I'm going to call for approval of minutes from the August 22nd, 2023 meeting.
I motion to approve the minutes.
I second the motion.
Okay, I'm going to call for oral comments from the public. I better read that.
Sorry, we have a raised hand from the Zoom meeting. Ethan, you may go ahead and unmute.
Hi,
Hello.
my name's Ethan, and I'm the contract city planner for Fortuna, and I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself and just say hi and put a face to the name, and just wanted to let you know that I'll be supporting Katie and also Merritt regarding current planning work within city limits. So I just wanted to say hi and, as I mentioned, introduce myself and put a face to the name.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. Hi.
Chairperson Howley, yeah, so Ethan with SHN, they've been doing a great job and working to do a lot of the development review projects, and you've probably seen some of their work on some of the referrals. So thank you, I really appreciate you saying hello to the commission, Ethan.
That's super nice. Any other hands up or public? Make a motion to close public comment?
Second.
Okay, public comment closed. So we'll go to item number 4 on the agenda, business. Number 1 is the election of the vice chair of the Planning Commission. No discussion is allowed prior to meeting. All discussion must be made at public hearing.
So I can just give you a very brief staff report. So with the resignation of the former chairman, Mark Seitz, then our vice chair, Stephanie Howley, has become our chair by the bylaws. And so now it's up to the Planning Commission to select their new vice chair who would replace Stephanie if for some reason she was no longer on there. So the procedures are laid out in the bylaws and the responsibilities and the duties. And so this is one that normally the chair would handle, and there can be dialogue from the committee to decide who would like to nominate who or who would like to step up, and you can have a discussion and decide how you would like to proceed with the election of a vice chair.
Is this something we might want to do when we have a full council
Yeah.
present?
I was going to say, could we wait till we have or not?
You could continue it, but I think, so we're missing Chris Mobley, and who else are we missing? And Sandy. So if you wanted to, you can continue it. I think we would continue to function, but if for some reason you were unable, it might be important today, if you're unable to come to the meeting on the 10th and we do have something that has to be acted on, then we would not have a chair who would be able to act. So you could elect somebody in their absentia as vice chair, I suppose, if you wanted. That's what happens sometimes when you miss a meeting, or
Could I get a volunteer, please? You're all awesome.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Commissioner Kine as vice chair.
I second that motion.
I love it.
I accept the nomination.
Yay.
All right.
Good job. Thanks, Merritt, for the push.
Good
Still
thing
gotta
we're
vote.
Here to discuss that.
Oh,
You still have to request a vote.
okay, I'll request a vote for that nomination for vice chair.
Commissioner Bennett,
I vote yes.
Chairman Howley,
Yes.
Commissioner Kine,
Yes.
and Commissioner Doris.
Yes.
Yay to me.
Yay. Okay, number 2.
I just wanted to pass out very quickly a copy of the staff report for item.
Thank you, please.
That's the entire packet. So
Okay.
I'll have to turn to the right page.
I didn't have this. Okay, so number 2 on the agenda is a public hearing to consider a recommendation that the City Council amend Municipal Court Code Chapter 17.03, 17.06, and 17.8 for consistency with adopted multifamily design standards and to allow agricultural employee housing consistent with state law.
Okay, thank you, Chair Halley. So this is a follow-up with the zoning amendments to support the design standards that were recommended by the Planning Commission to the City Council and ultimately adopted by resolution by the City Council. So we have our consultants with Ben Noble Consulting and Plan West here. So I believe Ben is going to provide the staff report for the committee on this item. Are you there, Ben?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And I've just shared my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Merritt. So again, my name is Ben Noble. I'm part of the consultant team led by Plan West Partners that's been helping the city on a number of items. And this item before you tonight, as Merritt said, is zoning code amendments for multifamily design standards and agricultural employee housing. And so within the proposed zoning code amendments, there are 2 topics that are addressed: multifamily design standards and agricultural employee housing. And as Merritt said, the hearing tonight is for the Planning Commission to consider a recommendation to the City Council to adopt zoning code amendments on these 2 subjects. So first, with the multifamily design standards, back in September, the City Council adopted the multifamily design standards after receiving a recommendation to adopt from the Planning Commission. And these design standards allow for by right approval for multifamily and mixed-use residential projects that comply with these standards. In the zoning code, currently design review is required for multifamily development, and a conditional use permit is also required in the RM zoning district for multifamily projects with 6 or more units, and in the neighborhood commercial and retail commercial zoning districts for all multifamily projects. So there's an inconsistency between what the zoning code currently requires and what the adopted design standards require. So in order to resolve this inconsistency, we have a few zoning code amendments before you tonight. And they're really sort of limited and targeted to address this inconsistency. And so what these zoning code amendments would do is amend the RM, the NC, and the RC zones to remove the conditional use permit and design review requirement for multifamily projects consistent with the multifamily design standards, and also adds a new section in the zoning code that requires compliance with the multifamily design standards and allows projects by right if consistent with the standards, and allows for deviations from the standards with design review. And this is all consistent with what the adopted design standards say. So this is really a cleanup of the zoning code to address this inconsistency. And so the second set of amendments have to do with agricultural employee housing. And this implements a program in the housing element, which calls for the city to amend the housing element to comply with state law related to agricultural employee housing. And so that state law is known as the California Employee Housing Act. It's codified in the California Health and Safety Code. And what that says is that in agricultural zones, agricultural employee housing must be treated the same as other agricultural activities, such as growing crops. And what that means is that no conditional use permit or other discretionary approval is allowed if a conditional use permit is not also required for other agricultural activity. And in your zoning code right now, within your agricultural exclusive zoning zoning district, a use permit is allowed or a use permit is required for all labor camps and labor supply camps. However, other agricultural uses in the AE zoning district are a permitted use allowed without a use permit. So this existing permit requirement for labor camps and for other agricultural uses is inconsistent with state law on the subject. So in order to resolve that conflict, a couple of zoning code amendments are proposed tonight. One would add agricultural employee housing as a permitted use within the AE zoning district, with some other requirements, such as evidence of a valid state housing and community development permit, deed restriction for permanent or seasonal employee housing, and an affidavit for temporary employee housing. Those are requirements just to make sure that the agricultural employee housing is complying with state law on the matter. And also we would add to the zoning code a new definition for agricultural employee housing that mirrors state law on it. So just to sort of dive a little bit more into the details about what state law requires, state law says that agricultural employee housing needs to be allowed by right in an agricultural district for employee housing with up to 36 beds in group quarters or 12 units or spaces designed for use by a single family or household, or up to 36 units for agriculture employee housing that meets certain eligibility criteria and is operated by an affordable housing organization. So what the zoning code amendments allows by right agriculture employee housing that is sort of defined by state law as meeting this criteria. The zoning code would continue to allow other types of employee housing with a use permit, as is currently the case. So agricultural employee housing that goes beyond what's specified by the state or is of a different nature than that, that would continue to be allowed, classified as a labor camp or labor supply camp per the current definition, and would require a use permit as it's required to today. So really, the agricultural employee housing zoning code amendments is an amendment to bring the zoning code in line with the requirements of state law as called for by the city's adopted housing element. And the zoning code amendments related to the multifamily design standards resolves a inconsistency between the adopted design standards and what the zoning code currently requires. So given that, staff's recommendation tonight is to consider the adoption of the draft resolution before you to recommend to the city council to adopt the zoning code amendments. So with that, that concludes my presentation.
So any questions from my fellow commissioners?
Yes.
Go ahead.
What is the difference between temporary worker housing and permanent residence? And then another side question to that is, do these go through fire code and building department?
Yes, so I will answer the second question first, which is the agricultural employee housing subject to state standards is something that's regulated by the state housing and community development. And so the permitting for that is handled by the state, and they would ensure compliance with all applicable building and fire codes. And then in terms of the differences between temporary and permanent housing, I'll sort of go on a limb here and maybe sort of follow up after looking at the statute. But the temporary housing is for a limited and defined duration, and it would need to be limited to that. And the permanent is something that is sort of year-round and intended to remain as sort of a permanent use for as long as the agricultural operation remains on the site.
And then at the end of either of those two lengths of time, the housing would be removed, demolished?
Yeah, so if the site is not in use as a agricultural operation, then the state permit would no longer be valid and would be rescinded for the housing use.
And who would be responsible for seeing to it that that happened? The state or local government?
So the state would, but in the standards, there's a requirement that the housing operator provides the city with a valid state permit. So that would be sort of a way for the city to make sure that the residential use remains in compliance with state law.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good questions, Commissioner Bennett. Any other questions from the fellow commissioners? Then I would like to open it up to public comment. Do I have a motion to close public comment?
I move to close public comment.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Close.
Hang on. Sorry. Ethan, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. Yes, I just wanted to add clarity to the definitions and terms. In addition to what Ben said, the temporary versus permanent is by time frame in the definitions. And they also include a seasonal term by limited to 180 days. And so that's really the benchmark for what's considered temporary versus what's permanent, in addition to what Ben said.
So the crop 180 days, and then when it's done, you move on? I didn't understand that.
Ben can add additional clarity, but I believe it's because agricultural workers tend to be seasonal and they migrate according to whatever season the work is. And so the state law is catching up to existing conditions and removing potential barriers for that housing development, because there wasn't really regulation that kind of allowed a thing like this to take place to assist agricultural workers, whether they be temporary, seasonal, or permanent.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ethan. Go ahead.
So there are three categories of agricultural employee housing under state law. There's permanent, there's temporary, and there's seasonal. And permanent is year-round housing that's intended to remain on site for the duration of the agricultural use. So it's permanent as long as the agricultural use use is there. And then there's seasonal, which is meant to be, not year round, just certain times of the year, up to 180 days per year would be used as housing. And then there's the temporary, where there's sort of intended to be a limited duration for the employee housing, that it will start at a certain point and that it will end at a certain point. And that's defined in sort of the rules that apply to that. And so those are the sort of three categories that would be addressed as part of the agricultural employee housing.
Thank you.
Ben, and just one question from staff. I mean, there's relatively few areas in the city where this would apply. One of the areas is south of the city along Eel River Drive towards the city's water treatment plant. And then there's a small area just south of Lonnie Drive between 12th Street and the freeway. So there's very little agricultural exclusive land in the city that this would even apply to. But again, we're looking to be in compliance with state law. I don't know if you looked at that, Ben, the zoning map, but anyway, there's a relatively small area in the city where this would apply.
Yeah, it's California.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yes.
I don't have to get too excited about it.
So this could include something as simple as travel trailers or mobile homes for temporary?
Ben, do you know the answer to that one?
So it would need to meet the state code requirements, and I think that kind of sort of manufactured housing would be allowed as long as it meets the state requirements.
Anything else anyone could think about? Well, then I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution P-2023-3107.
I second that motion.
Who's going to make a motion?
You just did.
Oh, sorry. Let me read it. I apologize. A recommendation that the City Council amend Municipal Code Chapter 17.03, 17.06, and 17.8 to comply with the adopted multifamily design standards and allow agricultural employee housing consistent with state law.
Then he seconds.
And read by
Sorry.
title only.
We already did that. I haven't been chair. I apologize.
And read by title only.
And
was
read
the
by
last
title
page.
only. Okay. So I would like to ask for a roll call vote.
I have to read the title, I'm sorry.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
P 2023-3107, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Fortuna recommending that this Fortuna City Council amend Fortuna Municipal Code Chapters 17.03, 17.06, and 17.08 to comply with the adopted multifamily design standards and to allow agricultural employee housing consistent with state law.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Bennett,
Vote in favor?
Commissioner Doris,
Yes.
Chairman Halley,
Yes.
and Commissioner Kine.
Yes.
Thank you, Ben.
Well, minus a few hiccups, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Oh boy. Where are we? Oh, Planning Communications, yes, Planning Commission Staff Communication, item number 5.
So I do not have anything to report. I will just, I have a brief summary. We're still working on the Fortuna Mill Commerce Center, formerly known as the Palco Mill site, so we're hoping to schedule some public meetings before the end of the year. We're also working with Plan West on that project. And I will say that Eel River Brewery is getting very close to their final sign-off on their building permit. It looks nice. They have a mural and a few more little things to do with regard to landscaping, but they're just about done. I inspected that site today. It's looking really nice down there. Beyond that, I have nothing else to report.
Then I'm,
Sorry. Have you heard anything more?
Is your mic on, Brian?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you heard anything more about the proposed construction for the veterinary clinic?
I have not. Gary, do you know anything about that?
What they've told us is they're over budget, and there's a few other challenges they're working with. They're trying to see what they can do to make it all coming back alive, but as of this moment, we're just on a major hold.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Gary.
and I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, thank you. Other than a few hiccups, thank you very much for helping me through this.